occasionally we would find Babuji in a car. Once it happened to be that we were going to Bangalore. It was about 2 p.m., 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Suddenly he turned around and said, "Look what a stupid thing I have done. I had agreed to give such and such a person a sitting and I forgot. And now Lalaji has just reminded me." And when I was about to do the work, Lalaji said, "Don't worry, I have already done it." So you see, we must be aware that there is a superior person, power, entity, who is watching us all the time. Not like the Gestapo or the secret police, you see, but with the intention to guide us in every facet of our existence. Because he watches, is the work going on? For him, there is no time. Somebody can say, well, what is he doing? If he is watching all the time, how can he work himself? I asked Babuji this question. If he is watching you all the time, what is Lalaji himself doing? Babuji laughed. He said, "Arey, he has got so much to do. What I am doing is but a minuscule proportion of his work." I said, "How can he keep doing the work and also watching you at the same time?" You see, here comes our compartmental mind, linear thinking, that if you are doing one thing, you cannot do another thing. But at that level of spiritual evolution, elevation, omnipresence, you can do all things at the same time. Not just one thing or two things. All things. Whatever has to be done, you can do at the same moment of time. How to develop this capacity, you see? Precisely by being alert to instructions, alert only to the call of his work, forgetting everything else, abandoning everything else, having the faith in the Master that what I need he will provide, he will enable me to work for myself in other ways. You know the example that Babuji used to be in the civil court of Shahjahanpur as a clerk. He had to write the judgment after the judge dictated it. Often the judgment would run into pages. And poor Master, he was in his constant remembrance of Lalaji and he never heard anything. He would go and sit in his small room and pray. I have not heard, what shall I do? And the dictation came, you see, verbatim. And he just wrote it down and presented it to the judge and got his signature. So we should not have this notion or fear that if we do his work, we will not be able to do our own. On the contrary, if we do his work, he does his work, he does our work for us. And I think nobody can do it better. I cannot possibly do my work better than my Master can, even my own work. So this idea that I have to work, I have to earn money, I have to look after family, you see, these are all egocentric ideas arising out of a fantasy that we, puny human beings, are really working, really earning, really looking after our families. When a minor accident on the street can maim a child, possibly kill it. When an inadvertent swallow of water can possibly infect you with the most dreadful diseases today. So who is looking after whom? More and more we are realizing today that but for His grace, we might have been dead 20 years ago. All your modern technological miracles, treatment of water, can you remove pollution in such a way that nobody can ever have the risk of disease? The other day I was reading about injection needles strewn all over the beaches of America. You see. Drug addicts prick themselves and they don't care what happens to anybody else, they just throw the needles there. Somebody, an innocent stroller or somebody who sits down on the sand is liable to get pricked and come away with the most dreadful disease unknowingly injected into his system. You see, I believe that the modern tendency to more and more disease, more and more accidents, more and more death, homicide, murder, rape, all this is making us depend more and more on the other power, the superior agency for our existence. If we but realize the predicament that we are now in, nightmarish predicament. I mean, you don't have to have nightmares in your sleep anymore. The waking state is enough. More and more we have to turn to prayer. Say, please look after us. I mean, which mother does not pray for her child today when the child is going to school? Let him come back safe, or let the little child come back safe. Let it not be a victim of an accident. Let it not be kidnapped. So you see, the more problems we face, the more we should, logically speaking, turn towards this higher element in our existence. And Babuji's life was a perfect example of that. He did not know where his next meal would come from. Perhaps many of you don't know that he had a pension, what we call, after retirement, the government gives a monthly dole until they pass off. I think in his case it was less than 130 rupees a month. In terms of dollars, of today it's about $7, francs 50 or 60, marks 13. And on that he raised a family and successfully educated his children. Not only that, in later life, after he retired, when he was receiving this pension, he was also feeding the abhyasis who used to come to him. Because in those days, there was no donation, there was no, daily donation as we brought in later for Basant, when it became impossible for him to do it. I think I introduced it in perhaps 1968 or 69, and I had to wait 3 years to get his permission to merely make a request to Abhyasis to pay 30 rupees a day during Basant. Because obviously, you cannot feed 1,000 people for 4 days on a pension of 130 rupees a month. But his dependence on his master made it possible, you see. In some miraculous way, things were happening. Somebody planted something on his field, harvested it and brought it home and said, Babuji, this is from your field. Babuji said, I have not planted anything. He said, no, but I had spare time and your land was next to mine. I just plowed it and planted 2 acres. Here are 3 bags of wheat. From his own land, his wheat planted and raised and harvested by somebody else. I was present on such occasions. So you see, it is, I think, a rather egotistical idea that we do anything. If spirituality teaches us anything, and if we are to learn anything, it is this ultimate lesson that we are but observers. This is what meditation is designed to inculcate into us progressively, you see. And the whole idea of observing and reporting, diary maintaining is merely for this, and precisely for this purpose, that we learn to separate the observer from the field of observation, which is also myself, the higher self, to be separated from the lower activity of the samskara-led life. It is a travesty to say that we are alive, we are free. I have repeated this so often. We are machines wound up by the spring. Occasionally we would find Babuji in a car. Once it happened to be that we were going to Bangalore.